Welcome, everybody, to the Business Spotlight, the podcast where we shine a light on the incredible entrepreneurs and business owners in our community. I'm your host, Craig Whipperman with Music City Action Coach, and today we're excited to introduce to you someone who is blazing a trail in the world of architecture right here in Nashville. Our guest today is Terry White, partner at Purser White. We'll dive into Terry's background, explore the challenges he's faced, and the successes he's celebrated. Whether you're a fellow entrepreneur, an aspiring business owner, or simply someone who loves to support local businesses, this conversation is surely to inspire and inform. So without further ado, let's welcome Terry to the podcast. Terry, how you doing today?
Oh, pretty good. Thanks a lot, Craig. I really appreciate you inviting me to participate, and I'm excited to get going in our conversation.
Awesome, man. I am too. I've been looking forward to this. I think the world of architecture is kind of intriguing because it's kind of it's kind of art. It's kind of where art meets building
Right.
construction, where
Mhm.
art meets design. So
Mhm.
it's very intriguing topic or industry or business. But why don't you give us a little bit of your background and share with us, how you kind of got to where you're at?
Sure. In general, I'm a native son of Northeastern Ohio, and my family and I, my wife and my two daughters, relocated from Akron, Ohio, where once again LeBron James is from, um, in July of 2019. And prior to that, we had friends who lived in this area for at least, maybe 15 years. We knew them since we were teenagers, and they made the journey down here as part of this significant Southern migration that's going on in the country. And we come and visit them and hang out with them. They insisted that we stay with them. And so we saw their process over a number of years. And he always said, you got to come here because this is the land of milk and honey. And he's in the music industry, so he's grown from local to an international musician and musical director. And so it's been a really exciting journey. Ultimately, regarding architecture, it's a dream that started with me in a very unique way. Um, for me, it started when I was around 5 or 6 years old. I had my best friend in kindergarten. We were having our young intellectual conversation, and he mentioned architecture to me, and I didn't know what it was. And he's because I was very artistic and a very detailed person. Um, and he said, "Wow, you get a chance to, uh, do drawings and design buildings." And I thought it was amazing. So I kind of latched on to that as a dream. And that dream helped guide me throughout my elementary, middle school, high school, and through college. I ended up going to Kent State University, and they have an amazing, architecture program there. And the cool thing about me going through that program is that I landed my first internship immediately after my freshman year, which is very, very rare. It was me and another African-American gentleman. Uh, we actually went to Cleveland, Ohio, because we wanted to see a famous architect that was doing an architectural selection interview for the Cleveland Public Library, a very significant project. And when we got there, we weren't as excited about the famous architect's presentation, but there was an older African-American gentleman there whose presentation blew the famous architect's presentation out the water.
Hmm.
And we got a chance to meet him. And he said, "Would you love to come to my firm?" And we said, "Yeah, we'd love to." So we met with him in downtown Cleveland at his firm. And I told my buddy on our way there, because we always want to be prepared for anything, I said, "We probably need to get some resumes together. He may ask us, would you consider, would you like an internship here?" So we did that. And he did ask us that question as we were meeting. So we ended up landing that internship, which propelled me from a young man who came from a kind of a poor, you know, inner city adjacent childhood and upbringing, to a
Mhm.
gentleman now who's going to be wearing suits and carrying my briefcase, working at the largest minority-owned firm in Cleveland. And the cool thing about that position is that the owner of the firm was very connected to the political leadership in Cleveland. So all the major projects that came to the area in general went through his firm. Um, and just to name some of them, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, uh, Great Lakes Science Museum. At that time, it was called the Gund Arena, which is the basketball arena up there that the Cleveland Cavaliers play in. And I got a chance to work on some of these projects, and that's just to name a few. It was so shocking to the architectural program at Kent State University. They stopped the studio that we were in, which probably at that time had maybe 100 students in it, and he said, hey, I want to tell you guys something really interesting that happened. Justin and Terry landed an internship at an architecture firm. And so that provided an unbelievable vantage point of architecture for us, with an architect who was actually a historic figure in Ohio. He was the first registered African-American architect in the state of Ohio. There were occasions I'd be watching TV and I'd turn by PBS and see a story about architecture. They have a famous architect on there named I.M. Pei. He was talking about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And then I'd see my boss sitting on stage with him. So it was astonishing. It was a unbelievable introduction to the profession. And, from there, I've worked in Northeastern Ohio for the majority of my career. And very quickly in my career, I worked my way up to being a designer in the firm, because there are so many different roles you can play in architecture. When you're young, you're going to often start off, they'll give you some marked up drawings so you can just kind of get your feet wet. And so you work on that. So the first third of my career, you start doing markups and doing the full construction document process, helping them produce the drawings. Very quickly, I displayed my capability with design, which was really my passion. Sometimes people go the path of being a project manager, which is almost like a lawyer over the process. You're dealing with a lot of legal issues, code issues, lots of meeting, even financial issues, dealing with the spreadsheets related to budget and man hours. My passion so much was really just the design aspect, that what really made me come alive. And once again, even coming into the profession, I wasn't coming in to a firm after graduation as a green individual that they can only give red lines to. I'd already worked at a preeminent firm. So I had a lot of experience and was trusted to work on some of those major projects. And so that gave me great experience. So the career of architecture has been really pretty exciting. Often tell people I can't imagine having worked any other career, because as you mentioned in our previous conversation, architecture is kind of a fusion of just design. It's kind of like fashion. It's trendy. It could be have longevity to the architecture. They often say architects are jacks of all trades and masters of none, meaning to be successful in school and in the profession of architecture, you have to learn how to do so many different things, from public speaking to marketing to, for me, that even includes graphic design, working in business development, going on trips with executives from my firm to go win jobs in different parts of the country, and being the senior designer for those projects. In Cleveland, it even involved working with what we called Cleveland's $6 billion man. It was a very wealthy man who very prominent, and we had the opportunity to do a major design for him, and I was able to lead up that design and land that opportunity with that gentleman. So it just gets you in really interesting opportunities, and with the greatest reward being I can go to Cleveland now or different areas of the country and see projects that I've designed. And that feeling of being like a child that is on Christmas to see something that you designed. It started with words and thoughts, and you converted those words and thoughts to lines and shapes. And knowing that maybe thousands of hands touch the process, and what you envision in your mind as an expression of what the client wanted to accomplish was actually built. It could have been a $100 million project, and even the fact that I've worked on so many projects across the country, it would take me years to be able to find the opportunity to travel there. Because as a designer, you're not always going to the project. That might be the project manager. I would go from one big design project to the next. So, if I want to go to Richmond, Virginia and see an almost 1 million square foot retail development that I had a chance to be the senior designer for, that's also on my list to go visit. So that gives you some goals on my bucket list for the future. But yeah, our architecture's been a very exciting career.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome too, that you've been able to fulfill a dream you had since you were 5 years old, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So, and it's really awesome too. You say, as an intern that you worked on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, is that right?
Yeah, I was able to work. My buddy got a chance to work on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I
Hmm.
got a chance to work on the drawings for the Great Lakes Science Museum.
Oh, okay.
And so I'm 51 years old, and I've been in the architecture profession for 32 years. Um, Once again, since I, got that internship immediately after
Hmm.
my freshman year. So the project I worked on specifically was the Great Lakes Science Museum. And
Hmm.
in light of my age back then, we didn't use computers at all. In that firm, there was one computer that an
Wow.
engineer was sitting in the back in the dark area in the firm trying to figure out how to use AutoCAD. So we were still doing things by hand on Mylar, which is like a plastic paper,
Hmm.
and we were using ink pens and other types of pencils, doing
Hmm.
those projects by hand. And in addition to the Great Lakes Science Museum, working on some details and helping out with that project, anytime I ride by, I believe it's called Quicken Loans Arena now, the
Hmm.
basketball arena that they renovated. Anytime I would drive by and see these massive like air intake grills on the side, which would
Hmm.
seem, it's kind of at street level, would seem very insignificant to people. But for me, I'm thinking, wow, I got a chance to draw those or design those by hand, that they trusted me as
Yeah.
a freshman or going into my sophomore year to participate in that project on those drawings. It's kind of unheard of.
Hmm.
And it speaks to those small beginnings that were very important steps in your
Hmm.
career that you'll never forget.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's pretty fulfilling, I would imagine, from that perspective,
Absolutely.
to be able to see something you created.
Right.
Uh, I mean, and it's not like some small thing. It's a huge monstrosity that
Right.
everybody can see and observe.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um,
Yes.
yeah, that's pretty cool. So you had a friend who invited you to the Milk of Land and Honey down here in good old Nashville, huh?
Yes, you
That's
did.
that. You know what? I've never described it as a land of milk and honey, but there is definitely something about the Nashville area and
Mhm.
Middle Tennessee that has I don't know, it's got a soul to it or something. And the music business has a lot to do with that. But and there's a lot of there, and I think that's the cool thing about it. Yes, there's music. It's not only country music. There's all kinds of music, and there's all kind of creative people around,
Mhm.
and that kind of just adds to the setting. I mean, Middle Tennessee is probably, I don't know, it's one of the more, in my opinion, one of the more beautiful areas in the
Yeah.
country. So, the opportunity for you to come here and spend time, and I guess decide that, wow, this is a good move for me. Did you just pick up and move, or did you have and then come down and find out where you're at now, or how did that work out?
Well, just kind of on that larger topic, and I'll get specifically into what you just
Hmm.
asked. From the African American perspective, historically, if you think about my family and all of our families, by and large, there's only rare occasions where our heritage didn't come from the South.
Hmm.
So me being raised, in close proximity to my grandparents, in church where my grandfather was the pastor, very influential on my life, and kind of shaping how I view life and how I interact with people. So all of our grandparents moved from the South to the North because industry was in the North.
Mhm.
Steel, cars. Akron was known as the rubber capital of the world.
Mhm.
um, the Goodyear blimp and that hangar. So there was a intensely robust middle class success for African Americans moving from the South. So that was a massive northern migration. Now, with different things that have happened in politics over time and in business, um, the those states with all the industry are now referred as the Rust Belt, meaning if you go to some of those areas, sometimes it almost looks like war occurred there. It's been bombed out, industry left, and unfortunately, the drug epidemic has, moved in very strongly there. So the magnitude of business happening in that region, there's no comparison to the scale that's going on here. And
Mhm.
Nashville isn't LA, it's not New York, but it's, for me, from the paradigm I came from in Northeastern Ohio and the Rust Belt situation where there wasn't this magnitude of business going on, or it wasn't an international region. Nashville being such an international draw for major corporations, um, has created a great opportunity. So at some point in my career, at one of the, kind of 2 or 3 firms ago, where I worked in Northeastern Ohio, I had the great opportunity in the firm I was working in Shaker Heights to work in a specific studio that was called a placemaking studio. And I think it was probably the funnest part of my career, prior to now. It was a conglomeration of multiple designers, graphic design, a gentleman who had experience in both architectural design and industrial design, also planners, and a gentleman who was also a senior designer like myself and a planner. So planners are dealing with, how land is used, and even before you get into the architecture, where do we have green spaces and what does it feel like to walk along the road? What are the amenities? What are the lights? What are the exterior furniture? How we use
Mhm.
trees and how we create spaces, outdoor rooms, and all those cool things. So I got a chance to really have full immersion into planning and architecture. So that was really cool. So um, from that scenario, I kind of connected with one of the gentlemen there saying, we do have to develop a plan for retirement from architecture because that is a challenge in architecture. Um, how to figure out how can I position myself for retirement. Um, so we started to just develop a plan, in our personal lives of what can we do to make some major changes. And I really arrived at a point where I kind of felt like I was kind of maxed out in the market
Mhm.
there because once again there wasn't the same level of opportunity as we have in this economy here in Middle Tennessee, and I really wanted more for my family.
Mhm.
um my wife and I, and if you kind of do the math, I'm 51 and my wife and I have been married for 31 years.
Mhm.
So you do the math, we got married when I was 20 and she was 19. We were high school sweethearts, met at 16 years old. So the role of providing for my family started for me at 20. So that's really how I see myself. Yeah, I want to be successful in business, but what's my vision for my family and the needs of my family, short term and long term. So I really wanted more. And and beyond what I wanted for my family, I was kind of done with the weather, which I, jokingly call the frozen tundra. I grew up in it, and in times walking to school, I'm thinking, is this fair, or is it, or is this child abuse? I can't even walk forward. It's so freezing cold. I'll get frostbite on my face, and I'm walking backwards to try to get to school, and I'm like, wow, this is brutal. So as I got older, I'm thinking, I'm kind of done. I
Mhm.
want some more sunshine. I don't want the vitamin D deficiency. And I just wanted something way more for my family. Um, so my plan to make it from Northeastern Ohio to Middle Tennessee probably ended up being around 10 years.
Mhm.
I had to just make some intense adjustments in my life to facilitate financial opportunities that would allow us to, renovate our home, sell that, and um, be able to simultaneously facilitate a purchase of a home in Nashville where there weren't really any homes. You'd have to
Mhm.
almost buy a home sight unseen. So in that, knowing that I needed to make a transition, I had a former colleague who was a president of architecture at a very large national company that had maybe 8 or 9 offices across the country. And he said, when we get big enough, let's talk about you possibly coming on board. Well, they're finally grown to a significant size. And I realized that they had an office in Brentwood, and they didn't have architecture in that office. They had surveying and development and some other disciplines. And I wanted to take that opportunity to transition from where I was in that firm to that opportunity. And I told them if I came on board, I'd love to work in the Brentwood office. So it was that move that facilitated our arrival here. We were able to, very fortunately, find a beautiful house. And I was talking to our real estate agent on our journey down here, which I always tell people was like a epic biblical journey for us to arrive. We had packed everything we own in U-Haul's biggest truck and towed our minivan, which was packed to the ceiling, and our family sedan that I drove to work was also packed. So my wife drove that vehicle and had our young daughters in that vehicle, and I drove the truck. And we had scheduled some movers that we had to meet here in actual the Antioch area, the Cane Ridge area.
Mhm.
Antioch was obviously like a suburb of Nashville. Um, and I said, it doesn't matter which of us get there first. We have to meet those movers. So that journey included us being constantly separated. I'm like, go, we have to race to get there. Um, and it also included a massive rainstorm where you literally couldn't see, but we couldn't stop. And in my mind, very creative mind as I retell the story, it felt like there were some ocean waves crashing over the side of the expressway as we're traveling down, but we still can't stop. Um, so my wife beats me down here. My daughters, they felt like this was home. As soon as they arrived, it was such a unique experience. As soon as they came in the house, they just ran in and started playing hide and seek like we've always lived here. Um, Nashville has a unique way of feeling like home. It really felt more like home here than it did in Northeastern Ohio. And I think part of the reason that is that the values and the Southern comfort that our grandparents raised us with is here. So it felt like this is where I belong.
Wow.
Um, so it was a very exciting process, and it's been a beautiful process for both me and my family.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I agree with you. There is and that's like another ingredient. You've got the landscape, the geography, the spirit and soul of the music industry.
The
You've got the
weather,
entrepreneurial feel. There's a lot of can do, type of, but then there's the welcoming home feel that Nashville just has naturally,
right.
and
Mhm.
that's what fuels it. And I'm sorry, Terry, when did you guys move down?
But it was July of 2019, so like
July of, no,
5.5 years. Yeah.
yeah, okay. So before the pandemic then.
Yeah, I think we were the last family that was allowed to leave Northeastern Ohio to make it in just before COVID. And I say that jokingly that it was kind of miraculous that we were able to make our move before COVID hit, because if COVID had hit, we wouldn't have been able to make it down the way that we
Yeah, it would have been horrible. So,
hmm
congratulations on being able to do it before
Yeah.
that
hmm
tumultuous time. But
Sure.
yeah, and gosh, I forgot where I was going with that. But
Okay.
being able to come down here before the pandemic and avoid all of that is kind of a big deal.
Mhm.
But and then oh, I know, the explosive growth.
Yeah.
I think the explosive growth in Nashville probably started. Mm, I don't know, probably before you moved here. I'm thinking like maybe 13, 14, and 15 is when it started growing,
hmm
you know?
hmm Mhm.
We lived here many years ago. As a matter of fact, very briefly, I'll share with you that my wife and I both grew up in Alabama, got married, and lived in Franklin from '95 until like about 2004, and then relocated to Pittsburgh
Wow.
for 17 years, and then just got back last summer.
Wow.
And you know, I used to travel all around the country, and sometimes out of the country, and come back, and I would make the drive back from the airport, and think, you know, this is. I mean, all I did was land and come back home, and there's a feel to it, and I'm like,
Yeah.
this is such a great little secret. Nobody knows about this
Mhm.
little town,
Mhm.
and that was 20 years ago.
Right.
And of course, the secret got out uh,
Sure.
with I mean, NFL football, and the hockey team, and
Right.
and then some of the things they've done downtown with the Frisk Museum, and and other things like that. It's just drawn more and more people in.
Mhm.
And again, the secret's out, and I don't think it's going to stop.
No.
Now we're redoing the Titans Stadium down there,
Yeah.
and that's just going to
Mhm.
draw more people and from a broader area. You're going to have people coming from around the world. It's not like they don't come already from around the world, but you're going to have more people coming from around the world, and I think the growth is just going to continue. Hopefully,
Absolutely.
it's done wisely. Back to some of the things you were talking about as far as planning goes.
Sure.
And I can only imagine that, I don't have any insights into it, but
Mhm.
I can imagine that, well, it's my hope. Let me put it this way. It's
Yeah.
my hope that people realize that what makes this city cool is, the heart and soul of it, and that
Right.
you're not pushing people out and can't really afford it. But
Sure.
I hope that's what happens. But
Matter of fact, that growth, because we did a lot of research, before we moved, because we're not a family that moves much. We were in that same home for 19 years in
mhm,
Northeastern Ohio. So this was the only move we've made as a family. So we're very judicious in our moves. We do a lot of research. So I was researching a lot of things in the area, the flooding that may occur. So we wanted to pick a house that couldn't flood.
mhm,
Um, and we're researching demographics and financial opportunities here. Um, so we're just really attracted to the weather. I think that around the time we were doing that research, we saw that the general trend of the amount of people moving per day was between 85 and 100 people per day. And it hasn't stopped since
mhm.
we moved, which is unbelievable. But
Yeah,
that speaks to, how this is a great place for an architect to be.
yeah,
And like I said, I've never experienced this level of economic opportunity here. Yeah, it's an expensive place to live, but if you're fortunate to be able to get a house, our home would have done something a home has never done for us, which was create wealth for us.
mhm.
The amount of equity that we gain in our home is, I think we've gained 50% of the value of our home in equity in 5.5 years, which is
Yeah,
unbelievable.
that is unbelievable. But you know what? Congratulations on that too,
Sure.
because that's some you in 5.5 years. That's kind of amazing. That just kind of a bellwether of what kind of growth has
Mhm.
taken place. And
Right,
and you know what? That's a sign that hey, there's more building that needs to take place. And
right,
if there's more building that's going to happen, then you're in the right spot, right?
right. And to that point, the issue of whether it's gentrification or development, I mean, growth isn't easy.
Hmm.
In so many different areas. If there's rapid growth, there are going to be lots of challenges. So
Yeah.
affordable housing is a huge issue in the area. And one thing I had to do moving here, because architecture is connected to the community and the needs of the community. When you move from one community where you know where the issues are, and you move to another community, you really don't know what those issues are. So
Hmm.
you have to do full immersion in the culture and really spend a couple of years just asking questions
Hmm.
by virtue of new relationships that you build. So I immediately connected myself to the National Organization of Minority Architects, and the chapter here in Nashville is called Noma Nash, and that connected me to kind of an architectural family. I was also very fortunate that the company that I moved here with, they really gave me a credit card and said, "Hey, you need to spread the news that we now have architecture in this office." So they facilitated me being connected in very important organizations like ULI, the Urban Land Institute. They're really connected with all the moving and shaking through politics and development, just how land is used, how we're dealing with things in the future. And I got so connected there that people were saying, I have to know who you are because I see you absolutely everywhere. I was meeting politicians, bankers, developers, architects, everybody who was anybody here. I got a chance to meet by virtue of being connected with both NOMA, also the American Institute of Architects, the AIA, and ULI. And to the
Mhm.
extent that some of the gentlemen, African American gentlemen that I met in ULI, they said, "Hey, man, would you be interested in being involved with this kind of minority wing of the ULI called ULI Pathways to Inclusion, to where you can see people like yourself who are minorities of different professions um, finding success in this region." So I said, "Hey, I'd love to be involved." And shortly after being involved, they saw I was very dedicated to the process because once again, I needed that full immersion. And they said, "Hey, would you consider being a co-chair of ULI Pathways?" And I said, "Sure, let's do it." So I was in that role for a couple of years, and that was phenomenal.
Mhm.
I ended up having so many clients in ULI Pathways, and it was just so inspirational to see. I often say that in the minority community and African American community, the success of others is my success. So once again, I grew up in Northeastern Ohio, and you know, I was so fortunate that the only championship that was won in my lifetime in Cleveland was with the Cleveland Cavs. I was there. I told my boss at that time, just to let you know, obviously I love basketball. That's my favorite sport, and I don't think there may be another championship in my lifetime here. I said, I have to go to that parade. He said, no problem, you can go. I'll open it up to anybody in the office. I took my wife and my daughter's there, and it was another epic scenario where it was a crush of more than 1 million people.
Oh, wow.
I
Yeah.
think the movement you can gauge movement as miles per hour. You can
Mhm.
gauge this as feet per minute. You might have moved 2 feet a minute at certain points in time in the crush of people outside on that very hot day, to the extent that my daughter or my wife, it was so tightly packed and we were holding on to each other. My wife still got separated from me with our youngest daughter, and I'm still with my oldest daughter. I think my wife found a tree to stand by to get out of the crush of people. And then I'm still moving with my daughter, my oldest daughter, to get through that crush of people. It probably took us an hour to get through this specific crush of people. It was at the end of the parade near where, LeBron and the team will be turning in to end the parade. At the moment I got through that crush of people, it felt like the scene in Shawshank Redemption when he made it out of that sewer pipe and lifted his hands up in the air. That's how I was in the street. Oh my God, we made it. We set our chairs down and sat there and watched the parade. So that was unbelievable scenario and situation. So yeah, just a little interesting story of little history there for our family.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, celebrating, I don't know. It's really awesome to celebrate, a championship like that,
Mhm.
and the whole city, the whole city of Cleveland, uh,
Right,
participating in it. I've always
right.
wanted to see the Indians win the
Mhm.
World Series,
Oh
Well,
yeah.
I guess they're the Guardians now, right?
Yep.
I like to see them win the World Series, and they've been close a
Right.
couple of times here in the last few years, but uh,
Absolutely.
not today. Well, tell us about your current company and your role here in
Yes.
Purser White.
Yeah. So Personal Right Architecture, um, it's a small business. It's our firm here, and
Hmm.
we are here in Nashville. We're in a small area of Nashville where there's tons of recording studios called Berry Hill.
Oh yeah.
A lot of historic, recording studios, very quiet, walkable area with a view, to downtown.
Hmm.
So it's very accessible and very convenient for us. I have a business partner named Dave Purser.
Hmm.
He's more of a native of Tennessee. He went
Mhm.
to the University of Tennessee, Knoxville. So he had been in this area for 15 years or more. So I'm the out of town guy who people don't know. They don't know my name. They don't know me. And business is done by virtue of relationships and trust. So I had a lot of work to do in that area to get exposure in the community. He had already built a name with his previous firm. Um, and he previously had a partner, then he was a sole proprietor with an employee. Um, and I had a previous partnership. I was partnered with a gentleman in Lenox Village who had been designing homes and just residential projects for 35 years. So he knew everyone. That created a relationship for me with very important developers like Regent Homes. So they had become a client. And and so many other very important clients. So in that partnership, I was the registered architect. He was not an architect. He was, a residential designer. So that put a lot on my plate when I got great architectural projects. So I needed help with those projects. So he introduced me to an architect who he had had interactions with previously. He passed work to him, and that gentleman would pass residential projects to that previous partner. And he introduced me to him, and I said, "Hey, I'd love to hire you as a consultant to help me with some of the workload, some of the code analysis and just some of the manpower that I need for the project." And as we were working, we had good synergy. And one thing in architecture is that it's a heavy lift. There are so many different things to handle and take care of, that doing it alone without a partner is a really challenging task, particularly in an area where you're drinking through a fire hose here.
Mhm.
There was no slow introduction, to work. It was, hey, you're an architect. Hey, can you help me with this project? And doing proposals and kind of blasting off. But as you start a firm, there's so much red tape. There's so much you have to do with an accountant, with lawyers,
Mhm.
to get everything set up and manage things. And, how do you deal with the accounting on a day-to-day basis? Uh, what software are you using for that? Are you using QuickBooks or something else? So they're just unlimited number of tasks. So we had great synergy when we worked together on a project, and we said, "Hey, would you consider us partnering up together?" So we, met with lawyers and a CPA and talked about what that relationship could be, and we made that decision to launch, and that was in April of 2022. And interesting thing about us coming together is that my business partner Dave Purser, he already had a huge project on his plate. At that time, it was a 232 unit apartment development in Franklin.
Mhm.
And once again, COVID was coming into play, and that development had like 8 different apartment buildings on that campus, in addition to a clubhouse. So he had a massive amount of work. I also brought in a project of a 72 unit luxury rental townhome development in Louisville, Kentucky.
Mhm.
Um, so that was me, with this massive project, and I had to try to hire someone in the firm while designing this whole project. So, and then in addition to doing architecture, my experience in the business was also a lot of graphic design. So I'm doing business development, working with web designers, pulling those images together because it's so important today. You can be a great architect, but if you can't be perceived as that online, um, who can find you? And
Mhm.
not all business is done by word of mouth. Nowadays, I evaluate a company by how I perceive them online before I even meet them personally.
Right.
So that was very important that we could at least, now to build a massive website would be quite a challenge, but to build a one-page website that has a ton of information in it to state your credibility was very important. So we got that going while I'm still, managing that project and receiving, another project to work on, hiring someone. So So we got things going and started winning even more projects. And we've done in our firm, we do not only residential, we do a lot of commercial work. And the projects we end up landing are a reflection of our collective experience of me and my business partner. And some of those project types include, like I said, commercial projects. It could be a mixed use development. It could be a retail development. It could be tenant, build out scenarios um, in different locations. Senior living. I had 25 years of a senior living project experience, designing worship spaces, churches of different faiths. Um, Even warehouses and storage facilities. So there's just a wide gamut of project types, and we have to be careful as a small business. You have to be judicious on what you take on because you can't do everything.
Right.
You have to make sure your current clients that you can serve them well, and so that allowed us to grow as a firm. And we realized even in our growth, we would have growth of full-time employees, but we also needed, some interns or fractional employees or just some consultants that we can reach out to based upon the specific project's needs that weren't necessarily part of our overhead, but were part of the funding for the specific project. Um, so having a host of people we can call, say, hey, we have this large project. Do you have capacity to help us with that? Was very important for our growth as a small business. We're also a very collaborative firm. That's always been my nature in the firm. Some people are more collaborative than others. I was always a team player. I love working with the team. Um, so I've also established relationships with other very large firms. Sometimes matter of fact, one project that was introduced to me was in my previous business partnership was a 100-acre mixed use development in Kentucky, in Oak Grove, Kentucky. And that's a massive project for someone who is a one person architectural situation. So I partnered with a firm out of Atlanta, and that's a firm that has two offices, one in Pittsburgh, one in Atlanta. Um, so we collaborated on that project. So basically, with any call that we get, I need resources to reach out to someone and not get a no. I need to get a yes that I can help you. If someone does tell me no, I can pick up the phone and call someone else. So I have the capacity to design a custom team that allows us to serve the client for that project very well.
Mm-hmm. So, what are your plans for um, your company today? I mean, are you seeking to stay at the same level, or are you looking to grow aggressively, or what's like a 5-year vision or plan for you?
Yeah. The ultimate goal is to be able to grow to a size to where, as business partners, you can delegate more of that responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, you'd like to have a level of work-life balance, but in a small firm, there is no work-life balance. Or when you're just starting out, you're doing all-nighters, you're doing whatever it takes to serve your clients, to build credibility in the market. Because being a business owner is not just doing work, it's also a learning process. Now
Mm-hmm.
you're in kind of the college of business ownership. And what does that look like for you in your profession? Um, I'm sure there are books written about it, but you wouldn't necessarily have the time to read the books because you're just, like I said, you're just drinking through a fire hose.
Mm-hmm.
So in our planning, we never plan to be a massive firm because when you get to that level at the top of the firm, you're really more of a business executive.
Mm-hmm.
Well, at heart, I'm a creative.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in addition to architecture, I grew up doing music, all my life. Growing up in the church, playing drums and singing and writing songs, and then transitioning to more of a professional approach to playing drums and using technology and launching tracks and getting a chance to play at big outdoor festivals and different things like that. And all throughout high school, I was in so many different bands and like vocal ensembles. So I'm just a super creative person, and or even just doing art. Um, so I would never want to be just locked into a position as a business executive.
Hmm.
I'd love the opportunity to still design,
Hmm.
because that's what my passion really is in architecture. So we never envisioned getting any bigger than maybe 8 to 10 people.
Hmm.
Um, and matter of fact, in our role as architect, we have the opportunity to hire lots of engineering firms for the projects that we work on. So we hire structural, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing engineers for projects. And some of those engineering firms are amazingly successful in this area. They they're working on some of the largest projects in the area, from the new stadium being built to some of the $1 billion worth of work they're doing at the airport. So we've hired them, and some of them, one of them is no bigger than an 8-person firm.
Hmm.
It's a more manageable size. So, that it's just confirmation for us that, that'd be a good, kind of endpoint for us.
Right. And so what's your employee count now?
Right now we're at like 5 employees,
Hmm.
including me and my business partner. And
Hmm.
then, like I said, a host of consultants that we could work with. Right now, on a daily basis for one of our projects, I'm dealing with a consultant out of El Salvador,
Hmm.
a talented young person. It could be someone from anywhere in the world, that we're working with, that has the capability and the capacity, that we establish a relationship with, and their fees match, the fee requirement that we need, for our project budget. So technology has made it really interesting, and in the same way that we're doing a podcast today, and we've never met face to face, met through LinkedIn. Um, Technology has made the world smaller and has allowed us to build a team in a much more creative way than you would historically.
Hmm. No question about it. Yeah. And on that note too, the you talk about technology, the onset of AI, artificial intelligence over the last, I don't know, since Chat GPT came out. What was that?
Yep.
That's over a year, maybe 2 years ago or so, something like that.
Mhm.
I find myself
Mhm.
using it, and it simplifies a lot of things.
Yeah.
What role is AI going to play? Do you see in the world of architecture? Is it going to replace it? Do you think? Do you fear that, or is it just going to be kind of a tool that augments and makes the job a little easier to fulfill?
I'll see it as a tool, because if you think of architecture as a profession, it was once part of the big three of professions:
Hmm.
architect, doctor, lawyer. That was kind of the historic big three. So as you think of a doctor using technology, are you going to be able to replace the experience of the doctor and his hands, maybe working in conjunction with technology? There's a human element that is essential. So we see technology as a tool. And in addition to some of the community organizations I'm involved in, I'm also involved in a lot of business intensives, because traditional architecture in school didn't really include much on the side of business. But now that I'm a businessman in addition to an architect, I need more business acumen, more tools. So I'm in these very intensive business training processes. um, in those processes, we AI has come up as a major topic, and a lot of professionals and amazing executives from this region and other regions in the country are participating and speaking to us in that business intensive. The gentleman who leads one of the programs I'm in, he used to work for Warren Buffett in Berkshire Hathaway. So it's interesting to be getting business advice and training and making those connections. Um, some of my colleagues in that business training, they're speaking about how they're already using AI as a business assistant. Um, and I'm seeing how it's been using more and more in my profession. Um, And matter of fact, in NOMA, the National Organization of Minority Architect, the NOMA Nash, the Nashville chapter, I was part of a committee that dealt with this topic, and they brought in several professionals to talk about how that's being utilized. You can use AI to even do a design. You can use words to say, design me a Middle Eastern inspired tent aesthetic architecture, and you can use more, and it'll produce an image, and you can use more descriptive words to refine the aesthetic of that architecture. And you can use that for your presentation if you have to pull something together very quickly. Um, I've seen people use it for an aesthetic or a feel or a concept, but I haven't seen people use it necessarily for the specific design. There are software opportunities to design maybe a floor plan or a site plan using different logarithms and criteria. So I'm sure some firms are using some of those aspects of it. So that's something I'm really intrigued about, and I've been diving into and studying how to use that. Obviously, there are some limitations to that. Obviously, one of the biggest limitations of renderings of people are the hands. The hands are like some grotesque conglomeration. So there's still some nuances being worked out, but it is fascinating to see what's capable, what's possible nowadays. And I don't see. I think there'll be some effect long term with the number of people using architecture, maybe of those who are younger, helping out with production.
Mhm.
But some of the essence of architecture will still be run through human hands and human minds, with some technology on the periphery, facilitating things. In our firm, when we came together, my business partner, we're both using AutoCAD to generate projects, but I quickly said that we have to transition to Revit. Revit is the modern software.
Mhm.
Architecture being done in AutoCAD will still exist. I still use it as a quick design tool, but Revit is software where you do BIM modeling, building information modeling, where you build the 3D model in the computer, and
Mhm.
then your drawings are extrapolated from that model. So there's more data. It provides a better end product for the client. So that's a transition that I've helped us kind of make in our firm, so we could be modern and as efficient as possible with projects.
Yeah, yeah, it's technology is advancing in all phases. Yeah, and I've had some exposure to building information modeling, and I
Mhm.
know exactly what you're talking about
Mhm.
from a previous role I was in, and that's pretty fascinating. That and it from complex complex projects, it streamlines the whole design and then implementation of it. And
Right.
then the other thing too, I think that technology, if you think of, well, like just maybe an extreme example, if I go out and want to build a house, I'm
Mhm.
kind of like limited to whatever, design there is already.
Right.
I can see somewhere the advancement in technology will allow me some ability on a very, manageable and affordable budget
Sure.
to maybe have a little bit more creativity in the design of the house I look to build.
Right.
And hopefully that's an end product of the advancement of technology and its influence in architecture. You think
Yeah.
so?
Yeah, I would say the sky's the limit. I don't think we can envision I think technology is changing so fast, we can't really envision the future in some ways. The concept that I always laugh at sometimes my wife and my daughters, they say, well, what do you think about this topic? I'm thinking, are you serious? You have almost all human knowledge in that little phone you have there. So it's unbelievable that we've gotten to the place where we went from like beepers and Blackberries. Now we have the phone, which is actually the computer,
Yeah.
and we can access any information from around the globe in seconds on our phone. And now artificial intelligence is kicking in. And as I've been researching more of artificial intelligence, there are people who've researched coding, how to deal with functions and software and
Hmm.
applications. Now AI will write code for you
Hmm.
for some of those applications, which is just unbelievable. So I think the sky's the limit, and it's going to be interesting to see how things play out. And most people think with this technology, well, it's not going to replace some people. But if you look at the trend of human history, technology always creates efficiencies,
Hmm.
and businesses have always had to find efficiencies because of the cost of us as individuals and all our needs, where sometimes automated, machine or a robot ends up taking place, just like the horse and buggy.
Hmm.
Um, so we have to be flexible, and we have to shift. And even me at 51 years old, I have to be very nimble, and I have to shift and keep developing with technology.
No question about it. You have to be resilient, right? You're exactly right. Throughout history, new technology has fueled growth, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And without it, you're stagnant and you don't grow and things are even worse. But it's up to the person who gets displaced because of technology to again be resilient enough to go out and re-educate themselves to
Hmm.
create more value for themselves in a new world. And as
Absolutely.
human beings, there's this like, gosh, I wish things were the way they were, and I don't have to change because I don't want to change. But
Mhm.
it's incumbent upon your ability to continue to
Right.
survive and thrive, to
Right.
evolve and change. And if you don't, you're kind of stuck.
Yeah.
But that's the age old. I guess that's the age old challenge, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
But uh,
Absolutely.
But Terry, it's been great sitting here chatting with you and learning about your business, your history, and where you're at, and this, last little piece about AI and technology and where it's going to take us.
Yeah.
I really do appreciate you spending the time and sharing with us in the community what you guys are doing there with your organization and where you're taking it.
It's been my pleasure. I really appreciate you reaching out to me and taking the time. I hope we can stay connected and discuss, down the line how technology has impacted both of us and the world as a whole. But I wish you all the best. And once again, thanks for this great opportunity.
No, you can count on it. I'll reach out to you, man. I really appreciate your time. All right.
All right.
Take
Take
care.
care.